Hello good folks, it is myself, David, the so-called Minimal DM, or at least that's what it says on the title of the channel. And today, rather than giving advice to new or fledgling DMs, I am going to have a rant, because Hasbro, the ultimate owners of Dungeons and Dragons, have in their infinite wisdom decided to make people like myself, Dungeon Masters, redundant. Shut up you lot! Anyway, look, now that you've got that off your chest, let me explain what is going on. Or rather, I'll explain what this video is going to be, because it's a little bit new to this channel. I don't believe I have ever done a reaction video before, so I am going to do that now. But the person I am reacting to is another YouTube creator who has an awful lot to say on, well, especially manufacturers, around the role-playing game and wargaming hobby. Now, no surprises, two of her major targets are Wizards of the Coast / Hasbro. Wizards of the Coast are a subsidiary of Hasbro, they bought them out. And Games Workshop. Who doesn't like taking a pop at Games Workshop? Now, the channel that I am going to be reacting to a video of is Dungeons and Discourse. This is the one where she goes on about the role-playing game hobby. The sister channel to this one is called Discourse Miniatures, and that's where she gets into all the 40k and Trench Crusade and all of that kind of stuff. I do enjoy her as a creator because she doesn't stick to all of the mainstream stuff. She does give shout outs and promotions to an awful lot of other, well, medium size down to small indie creators, and appears to be a very prolific gamer in and of her own right. Now, I will leave a link to the video in question just down below. I'm not going to put one up wherever I normally do, because if you're going to check out her full video, and I would strongly recommend that you do, because, well, she is a little bit in the tongue-in-cheek side, and some of her stuff is not necessarily safe for work, so I'm not going to get you to click on it right now and swap over to it if you happen to be, watching one of my videos in the lunchroom at work. I'll give you the opportunity to get to a safe place before you watch any of her stuff, and I will try and keep it relatively calm in the clips that I am reacting to, but her main video is worth a watch. Now, one criticism that I have heard levelled at her channels is that all of her thumbnails appear to be massively clickbaity, and everything is an absolute drama, and it can come across that way. Do stick around towards the end of the video, because while she is doing that initial setup, yes, there is all the hype, etc., that is involved in it, but she does do some really good investigative work to actually get her ducks in a row. So these are very legitimate videos. I do enjoy her content. But without further ado, I will prepare myself and we will get her to explain what is going on, and I will give you my thoughts on this. Now, I will preface this. Apart from just being a dungeon master, and there is the creative side of it, she is going to be talking about artificial intelligence as well. If you followed along on my channel, you will be aware that I work in the IT industry. So apart from many years of being a dungeon master and playing role-playing games and all of that kind of good stuff, I also have the background of being a computer engineer, so I can look at this from both sides. Spoiler alert, I'm not too impressed. Let's see what she has to say.
Hasbro, the corporate owner of Dungeons and Dragons, Magic the Gathering, has been going crazy lately, and things just got crazier, because now Hasbro is not only going to war with Wizards of the Coast and with Dungeons and Dragons itself.
This is another side thing. Hasbro has definitely been having issues with its staffing at Wizards of the Coast. They've been doing an awful lot of layoffs, replacing staff with AI. It's not good.
But they also just decided to go to war with all the players and gamers and role players of those games as well, as Hasbro have been caught and exposed in their new plan to end Dungeons and Dragons forever as we know it and transform it into something completely terrible.
Yeah, like I said, she can get quite dramatic.
Because Hasbro is killing D&D as we know it. And I'm not exaggerating.
Yeah, she is. At the end of the day, we always will have the option to be able to pull out rulebooks and get together with dice, pen, paper, and sit around a table. And that is hopefully where I am going to, I guess, kind of steer you in the direction of, because what she has to say later on in the video is not the best look.
Dungeons and Dragons has two types of gamers. On the one hand, you have the role players, people who make characters to play in a game.
That's the subject of another video, actually trying to get your players to roleplay. We'll tackle that one later on.
They pick their ridiculous accent, they take an extensive acting course, and then murder hobo their way through an adventure, ignoring every single plot hook put in front of them by their dungeon master. Your mileage may vary on that last part.
She's not wrong.
And to play the game as players, they only really need their character sheet, some dice, their imagination, and maybe a player's handbook to see their spells. Then on the other side of the table are your gamers who are dungeon masters. You know, your Matt Mercers. They craft much of the game. They determine a lot of the fiction happening at the table, and for most tables they also arbitrate, well,
Everything!
how does this rule work? Can my character do this? Why can't the dragon be seduced? There's just a little bit more onus on them, and this puts a lot of players off wanting to be a dungeon master, which means that the ratio of role players heavily outnumber the available dungeon masters. Hence, we have a forever DM phenomenon where someone can get stuck as the dungeon master and never get to be a player in the game.
Yeah, it's and this is fair comment, and this is where the crux of the matter lies. Everyone wants to have fun, everyone wants to play, but you do need a dungeon master, and if there is such a disproportionate amount of players looking for a game, but a very limited pool of dungeon masters or people who are willing to be dungeon masters, then at what stage does the dungeon master actually get to be able to play? That is one thing. But two, it means that there is a far larger base of people who want to play Dungeons and Dragons out there than there are available tables for them to play at. And that is a problem, and that is part of the reason why that I guess do videos like the series that I have been, where I am giving hints and tricks and tips to new or fledgling DMs to show them that it's actually, well, okay, a learned skill, but it's not that difficult, and it can be pretty rewarding, especially when you seriously get one over on your players.
Because if you don't have a dungeon master at your table, you just can't play. However, on the other hand, it's really rewarding to be a dungeon master. You get to world build, you get to invent NPCs and locations, to create combat encounters and mysteries in your game, to insert all of your uncomfortable fetishes.
I did say that on occasion some of the stuff that she puts out isn't necessarily safe for work. You had been warned.
Now, this delineation between D&D gamers has been the case since the dawn of Dungeons and Dragons, and almost every single tabletop RPG in the world follows this exact structure. And Hasbro hate this, because this lopsided responsibility has created a culture in D&D where the people that actually buy the vast majority of products for Dungeons and Dragons are the dungeon masters. Because dungeon masters, you know, they need to buy all the books anyway, and therefore they often share everything with their players.
She's not wrong, and yeah, I can certainly well imagine that. Back when I was just playing 2nd edition, I had bought the player's book. I think it was a while before I got hold of the Dungeon Master's Guide and the Monster Manual to go with it. And, you know, with those three, you can get away with being able to run a reasonable session. You don't need all of the rest of the books, but that doesn't mean that there is a large selection that I have sitting under the table just over there, reference material, where I can pull something out and say, yeah, this is actually the official rule for the amount of damage that a trebuchet will do, because I happen to have the castle guide, or the cargo capacity of a Viking longship.
They share their books, their dice, their wives.
No, just no. The wife was watching this and she said, no. That's a fib.
Dungeon Masters buy one product and share it with 6 people, but Hasbro wants 6 people to buy one product instead.
From a business point of view, yes, I can certainly see where, as a business model, you want to get as many customers through the door as you possibly can. You want to get them buying as much product as you possibly can. And it is different if it is a game like, what's the other one that Wizards of the Coast do? Magic the Gathering, where every player needs their own deck of cards, and you go out and you buy large amounts of booster packs and you create your deck. I can certainly understand where they are getting that idea from. But if you are going to be buying something where you already know the model, where one person has the resources and they share around with you, why would you get into that in the first place? Unless you are looking at breaking it down completely, rebuilding it from the ground up, in which case you've got to make damn sure that you have a product which is as good as the last one, otherwise people just aren't going to buy it. And at the end of the day, that model that she is talking about is exactly the same model that every other role-playing game adheres to. It's not a new concept. Other people do put out role-playing games along those traditional lines, and they make money from it. If you're going to pull something down and rebuild it from the ground up, just make sure that that new model that you're creating is something that people are going to buy into, because everybody has the option of voting with their feet. And if your product, your new business model is not to the liking of the people who would be buying your game, then you're on a hiding to nothing and you're going to go down the tubes. I've seen it too many times.
Okay, so how is Dungeons and Dragons changing? Well, this month, Hasbro began secretly making some really big moves company-wide in a certain direction, but they got caught. So, firstly, Hasbro have just launched a brand new studio under their umbrella called Sixth Wall. This studio has a mandate to, as Hasbro themselves say, implement behavioral licensing for their products, aka they are creating AI which supposedly replicates the way certain fictional characters think, speak, and act.
And this is the big crux of where I am going to be having my rant, because I will freely admit I am not the greatest advocate of AI that there is out there. At the end of the day, I grew up as a kid in the 80s and we had Terminator. We know what AI can do, and it's not all that good. However, yeah, AI is here to stay, and there's not a great deal that can be done about that. I will go into more of that much later on in the video. Let's hear what she has to say about what Hasbro are doing.
In plain English, they're going to make AI personalities based on fictional characters that Hasbro own the IP of and that they can keep consistent. The examples of characters that they're going to be using this for, given by Hasbro, are Optimus Prime, Megatron, Mr. Potato Head, and of course, who could forget the entire cast of Clue. And also, I guess, they get to replicate Tim Curry's personality for all eternity?
How about that?
Frankenfurter as an NPC. Maybe there are some upsides to this AI thing.
In other words, they're essentially inventing fake Mr. Potato Head AI bots that can develop parasocial relationships with children and advertise products to them under the guise of being their friend.
As a parent, sucking kids in with AI, that is a whole different argument, and certainly not one for this channel. You can probably tell from the face exactly what I think about those kind of tactics.
But what does this matter for Dungeons and Dragons? Because they also say that these AI characters will be used for interactive storytelling experiences, conversational games, and connected physical products. Hasbro can use this software to standardize the personalities of notable NPCs for Dungeon Masters, allowing DMs to use these AI NPC characters to interact with players at the table via audio on a laptop or phone, as opposed to simply doing the voice yourself and having fun.
Yeah. That's half the thing of being a dungeon master. Well, look, if you are into that kind of thing, am I? Yes, Again, subject for another video. Is every DM? No, they're not. Is this the kind of thing where it's an actual reasonable tool? Having the voice and a standard character template, yes. But how does a DM have control over it? If you go up to a merchant and you've got sort of like the standard merchant AI and you want to haggle, the DM may have a set sort of price point. The AI should not go under this. But if it's sitting there on a tablet and interacting with your characters and they manage to haggle it below that threshold, where's your control as a dungeon master? And this is the thing, this is one of my bugbears. It is people's over-reliance on computers and by extension artificial intelligence to get it to make the decisions for them rather than making their own decisions. As a dungeon master, you cannot have something independent taking the control out of your hand. In other words, what is the point of you being there? But that's what we get to later on in the video. Let's keep watching.
And these individual character personalities will be potentially purchasable as microtransactions.
Microtransactions. And this is where we start getting to the real crux of the problem. If I recall correctly, the CEO, I think, of Hasbro, his previous business experience was with one of the big software companies. I think they were the ones that did World of Warcraft. I could be mistaken. She may go on to it later on in the video. But when you talk about online role-playing game history, you do have to look back at the sort of era around the turn of the century where we had the likes of World of Warcraft and EverQuest and all of the ones that came after that, and the fact that, yeah, you could pay actual money, well, not only just for the subscription to be able to play the game, there was that monthly cost, but there were those additional transactions where you could, buy a particular skin for your armor or that kind of thing. Not actual changes in the gameplay itself, even though you could buy sort of high-powered in-game currency to get access to be able to purchase bigger and better items so that you could make your path in the game easier. But that microtransaction model is something that I can certainly see that they are trying to move towards so that they can just get a continuous stream of money in rather than do a new release of rulebooks and people go out and buy it and, then they will get this big block of money when there is a new release. They don't want that. They want more of a constant income, and that is going to be with subscription fees and paywalls and microtransactions. Are we used to it? Yes. Hey, if you want to put all of your money into online transactions and in 5 years' time come out with nothing at the end of it, that's entirely up to you. At the end of the day, if I pay my money, at least I've got something physical that I can put on the shelf and look at.
And it will all be exclusive to D&D Beyond, including the actual adventures themselves.
D&D Beyond is essentially the subscription service that they have set up for, I guess, the newer versions of Dungeons and Dragons. Don't subscribe to it myself. Don't need to, I've got the rulebooks and imagination.
Just this week, Hasbro also got caught in the process of hiring a brand new senior AI engineer, whose role will be stationed at Wizards of the Coast.
And this is where I come back to something I said earlier in the video, where they are at war. Well, not at war, but there are certainly labour disputes going on where they are axing large amounts of the creatives at Wizards of the Coast, replacing them with AI. Now they're buying a dedicated one person that is going to be essentially doing the engine, the creative engine, for a whole studio.
This is a role for a senior AI engineer whose entire job will be to implement AI into the games of Dungeons and Dragons and Magic the Gathering. It says that their role will be to create customer-facing features, working on the intelligent generation of tutorials and NPC behaviors to create trained models for their games. And so this means that we will definitely be seeing a lot of AI-powered tools on platforms like D&D Beyond going forward.
Hey, if that's what floats your boat, Later on in the video, I'll show you basically just how good that kind of AI slop is.
This also means that Hasbro are finally implementing one of the biggest leaks that we heard about D&D during the OGL scandal. The leak that Hasbro were planning on introducing paid for digital AI dungeon masters to replace traditional human dungeon masters on their digital platforms.
Told you, they want to make me redundant. I wasn't lying, it wasn't clickbait.
That's right, Dungeon Masters, your hobby is being outsourced to AI now. They aren't hiding it, and they finally have all the pieces in place. They've got a studio creating NPCs and AI narrators. They're hiring for a new senior engineer to create AI NPCs specifically for Dungeons and Dragons. And finally, the last piece of the puzzle, the most important part for Hasbro, they're moving Dungeons and Dragons to a subscription fee model going forward, where everyone, whether you're a Dungeon Master or just a role player, has to pay Hasbro money to even begin playing D&D.
And this, unfortunately, is where their plan falls down. I was discussing this with my youngest, who is a role player, wargamer, and he heard that part of the video and he went, that's not going to work, because at the end of the day, well, apart from just normal game systems, anything that they have got out there, unfortunately, realistically, has already been pirated and is available as a free download on the web. Not that I am condoning piracy, not that I am condoning taking money off a legitimate product, but it's not me we're talking about. It's going to be younger people, and they know this kind of thing. They can do a quick search and they can download all of that material for free and just carry on as normal. They don't need this paywall or subscription service. It's not going to work unless you are talking about trying to tap into, and this is going to make me sound really old, but the younger generation's preference for instant gratification, where, yeah, they're used to paying a subscription service like, Netflix or that kind of thing, so they can get the TV programs. If they want a game of D&D, they pay the subscription and they're not going to balk at it. Maybe that is what they are counting on. Do I like it? No. It's counter to everything in the hobby that I know and love, and an awful lot of people do.
And honestly, the idea of replacing Dungeon Masters with a bot is Hasbro's dream. Actually, Hasbro believe they could be making a ton more money if DMs would simply stop sharing their stuff. They think they could be making like 10 times more money from Dungeons and Dragons.
She mentioned this earlier.
Hasbro's biggest problem with implementing AI Dungeon Masters 2 years ago, when this plan leaked, wasn't the technology. The technology still sucks.
Yeah, I'll show you how much the technology still sucks later on.
Now they've introduced a system where every single person that wants to play Dungeons and Dragons going forward will need to pay Hasbro money to play D&D on their subscription service if they want access to the new content that releases for the game every single month.
And this is exactly where they are going to come unstuck, because there is going to be such backlash about this. I can certainly see a fair amount of people actually going to the effort of just releasing stuff online, file sharing sites, that kind of thing, just realistically to curb the enthusiasm, let's put it that way, of what Hasbro are attempting to do.
And it was that system which was Hasbro executives' main focus and goal with D&D over the last couple of years, to make every player a payer. I know Wizards of the Coast have, in the past, officially promised that AI would not be implemented in Dungeons and Dragons or Magic the Gathering. And honestly, at the end of the day, the spontaneity, the original thinking, and the randomness a human DM brings to the table cannot be replicated by AI. And AI will railroad players, they will run pre-made modules poorly, they will create trope-heavy, unsophisticated games.
And I am going to stop the reaction there, because the rest of the video, realistically, is her going over the same points. How AI is bad, how Hasbro is doing the dirty, how it's all a really bad idea, and it is. Plus there is a call to arms for the community to rise up against this. Well, my lady, your call to arms has been answered. What are my credentials? Well, I'm an IT guy who plays Dungeons and Dragons. You can't get much more stereotypical than that. But it does mean that as a DM, I am well aware of the impact that this is going to have on, well, my hobby in particular, plus any new players that are coming onto the scene. And I also know a little bit about computers and, by extension, AI. Now, for those of you who don't know, you have many different types of IT people. We are, in some cases, generalist, but in most cases, quite specialist. I am not a programmer or an analyst or a network guru or an artificial intelligence guru. I am the guy who fixes the computers. And over the course of 40 years, I have probably dealt with far more faulty and misbehaving computers than I have good working ones. Well, they've been good and working by the time I've finished with them. What it does mean is that my whole livelihood is based on the fact that computers go wrong on a regular basis. Anybody who is sitting there thinking, oh, well, computers should just work, get a grip. It's a man-made machine, and like anything, it needs maintenance and it can go faulty. Because of faulty machines, I have made a livelihood over 40 years, raising a family, buying a house, vehicles, all of the expensive toys and games that are around the games room. And let's face it, this is not a cheap hobby. All you've got to do is walk into a Games Workshop store and have a hernia at some of the prices. But what that has left me with is an innate distrust in the ability of computers to do the job correctly. I'm always dealing with them misbehaving and going faulty. Therefore, any result that a computer gives is subject to cross-examination. And even now, when you do just a simple Google search and you get that AI overview, there is the warning at the bottom that says AI can get it wrong. Please double check the answers. The people that deal with AI know this. What are computers good at? Well, they're really good at doing large bulk calculations, complicated ones, very, very quickly. So, for example, in our terms, you could feed it the contents of a player's guide and a dungeon master's guide and simply tell it that you are firing at an orc using a sheaf arrow from a short bow, 30 yards distance, it's dressed in plate mail and it's prone. And it will instantly, or almost instantly, give you the chances of you hitting. It can collate all of that information, perform the calculations and come out with the answer. Really good at that. In terms of search engines, like Google, as I've said, modern AI is very good at trawling the web, going through a large amount of information that is pertinent to your question and coming up with the most likely answers. So, in work terms, do I use it for fault finding? Yes. If it's a particularly curly problem, then I can feed it in error codes and it will come back with, 3 or 4 things that I can double check with step-by-step guides on how to potentially rectify the problem. As a technician, what I then have to do is go through that list and say, actually, it's not that top one. It is number 3 that actually looks like the most likely cause of the problem, because there can be, extra little bits of information that you didn't necessarily put into your search in the first place. Again, it comes back to that human oversight. AI is not good enough to make an actual informed decision. All it can do is, in order, come up with the most likely causes. And of course, the more incorrect answers that people feed to it on the internet, then the greater the chances you have of just getting a plain wrong answer, because the people that it is getting its information from are just warped. Hence, the reason why you get responses like this example.
Though if it's anything like ChatGPT, in no time at all, it'll just be telling me that in order to cure my back pain, I need to drink bleach.
And she's not wrong. That is AI training gone bad. Apart from work, do I use AI for anything else? Well, yes, obviously. Any Google search, if I'm doing shopping or anything like that, there's that AI overview, and I do at least take notice of what it's got to say. Just in terms of this channel, I have been starting to use AI a little bit in terms of creating thumbnails. And this is where the whole crux of her video and this video is pointing towards the fact that AI is rubbish still. From a creative point of view, it cannot get it right. From a creative point of view, AI still needs something to draw off. So in all of those searches that I've been talking about, it already has the information there. All it has to do is troll through it and, tot up similar answers to get its list. When you're asking it to generate artwork or anything like that, it needs source material to be able to work from. So if you ask it for a picture of an elf, it'll look through all of the pictures of elves, and depending on whether or not most elves are male or female, that's what you're going to get. And it'll sort of blend the images and come up with a picture of an elf for you. Chances are, knowing people on the internet, it's going to be a rather scantily clad elf. But in terms of artwork, I am going to show you an example of where AI just sucks. This is an actual still shot that I took and put into ChatGPT to get it to just put some wording over the top. And this is what it came up with. Now, come on. If you cannot program a computer to recognize that the maximum number of fingers on a hand is 5, then you're not doing it right. Unless, of course, you're asking it to create a character from Deliverance. And because it couldn't get it right, I had to do it the old way that I was doing and just overlay text over the top myself using that image. Now, in terms of dungeon mastering or storytelling, I called on the services of my daughter, who does use it on occasion. She does write fan fiction, and occasionally she will find that she has managed to box herself into a corner, so she will put some parameters into Grok and it will come back with something. And I said to her, when it comes to storytelling, just how good is it? And she said it's absolutely rubbish. I said, okay, so if I were, as a player, to be confronted with a particular scenario, I'm down in a dungeon, come across a nasty monster, it would, chances are, expect me to either A, fight it, or B, run away. What if instead I turn around and say, I'm not going to do that, I am going to challenge it to a battle of wits? And I said to her, chances are, if it's trawling the web for an answer, the first place it's going to go for is the text of The Hobbit, and what you're going to get thrown back at you is the Bilbo and Gollum scene where he says, what have I got in my pocket? And she says, hang on. And she put the scenario into Grok. This is what it came back with. Now, pause the video there, have a read through what it says. But when you get to the end, if you have not heard those words in Andy Serkis' voice from Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, then you do not belong on this channel. Go away. Your geek rights have been revoked. So that was from Grok. She tried it with ChatGPT. It was even cheeky enough to actually give us the source material it pulled it from. Because in terms of fantasy adventure, that is the most common example of a battle of wits. That was what it went to straight away. That's not creative, that's shite. And what it does mean is that any AI-powered dungeon master, as she said, is going to give you the most bland, horrible adventures. It's just going to be orc after orc with a few goblins and kobolds thrown in. What you're not going to get is the party walking along the road and coming across a little girl who is sitting on a rock, bawling her eyes out because the kitten she has just found has managed to get it stuck up a tree. Please, please, brave adventurers, help me. And of course your adventurers, being heroic, are going to help her out. Somebody's going to go up the tree and wonder why this kitten looks maybe a little bit wrong, because in fact it's a mountain lion cub, or even worse, a displacer beast cub. And shenanigans will ensue. Now, unfortunately, because this video is posted on the internet, it now means that they can use their AI to draw on that material, especially the transcript. I have just trained it a little bit more in how to be a dungeon master, but all it can do is draw on somebody else's ideas. And let's face it, that one is going to be way, way down the list. You're still going to be getting orcs, goblins, and kobolds, but it does not have that creativity to just come up with something on the fly like that. And heaven forbid you finally come across a dragon and you've got a bard in the party, you know for a fact that it is going to try and steer it down the lines of some R18 material, because that's the most common trope that you get when you get a dragon and a bard. So what can we do about it? Well, unfortunately, yes, AI is here to stay, and yes, it is going to still continue taking people's jobs. And there are upper managers who are going to be looking at the company's bottom line and cost cutting and greater profits for their investors. And that is the route that they are going to be going down. Unfortunately, yes, the creative team over at Wizards of the Coast are feeling that kind of thing, and it's not good. Certainly guys that I used to work with, there has been a mandate that their organisations have to cull their workforce by around about 20%, and to keep the productivity up, just use AI. I really do feel for them. In terms of keeping your job, hey, I had conversations with the kids and said, learn a trade, do something a little bit more manual, plumber, electrician, mechanical engineer, that kind of thing. They are never going to go out of fashion, and robotics coupled with AI to be able to do that kind of thing is way further down the track. Chances are you are going to be in demand and will be able to make a reasonable living for a good while into the future. In terms of our gaming, well, number one, don't give Hasbro your money. But the call to arms and the solution, realistically, is to get new players into DMing. All of you old guard that are out there, if you've managed to make it this far into the video, then do the kind of thing that I've been doing. Put out some tutorial videos, help people get over that fear of being sort of like in the center seat, in the spotlight, and show them that DMing can be good fun. If they did drama at school, it's like an improv class, but with dice and violence. And in terms of the wider hobby, it may be that even though Dungeons and Dragons is the big brand name, and that's the one that everyone pretty much knows of, steer them in the direction of some of the smaller game companies. Find out what their interests are. Maybe it is something more futuristic like Cyberpunk. Invite them to a game that you're running. Get them to sit alongside you, behind the screen, co-DM with you. Nurture that new talent that is coming through. And then take the training wheels off, sit around the other end, get them to run a game, you be a player. Everybody wins. I did say that this one was going to be a little bit of a ranty one. Not quite as ranty as her video, but it has been quite cathartic. Thank you very much for staying with me up until this point. And if you have managed to do so, then please do hit the like, subscribe, add a comment down below, get notifications, especially if you're a fledgling DM, because I am going to be doing more helpful videos giving you tips and tricks on how to be a better dungeon master and get over that fear of doing it in the first place. But until then, take a deep breath. Rant is over. Get back to some gaming. Oh, don't forget to watch her ladyship's video down below. You guys have a good one. I'll see you next time. Toodle pip for now.